Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind, Season 8. Let's check it out.
She did ask me, though, she was like, why Lauren? And I was like,
That's a good question.
With Molly, it was like, yeah, we're very similar. And like, we get along, like, we like all the same things. But then I was like, with you, we could do everything.
Yeah.
And I liked all of that.
Yeah.
So I was like, why not?
Yeah.
So that looked edited. I don't know if they cut something out. It's possible that whatever they cut out wasn't important, but I don't know. But the recall that he's having right now is Monica asked me why Lauren, and Lauren says, yeah, it's a good question. I think, of course, even if Dave was very reassuring up until this point, at this early stage, very early stage in a relationship, Lauren would be curious. So she's like, yeah, that is a good question. And then he answers it in the edit, which I can't know. And sometimes they do weird edits because they're trying to tell the truth and they didn't have enough information. So maybe this is a sign of things to come. It's not likely. But anyway, he is saying initially that he is, yeah, it's not I wouldn't be reassured if I were Lauren or him, for that matter, by his response. Let's break it down.
Asked me, though, she was like, why Lauren? And I was like,
That's a good question.
With Molly, it was like, yeah, we're very similar. And like, we get along. Like,
Right. So in the edit, anyway, his first response to why Lauren is, well, with Molly, we get along. We like the same things. We're very similar. But with you, and then, so it wouldn't be inspiring if you're Lauren. Just think about if you asked your partner, why do you love me? And they said, well, with the last person I dated, and in the midst of a larger conversation, that would be okay. But if that's the topic sentence, it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence in your relationship. But then he continues with a very strange sentence that I don't know. She seems to know what it means.
like, we like all the same things. But then I was like, with you, we could do everything.
Yeah.
And I liked all.
But then with you, we could do everything. It's weird. He has this vague way of talking that is, on one level, you could just say it's vague. And I think the way he talks, it looks like he believes he's saying something and he thinks that he's saying something. Because one could say that he's purposely obscuring as a way of hiding or deceiving or something. And it doesn't have that look to it. I can't know, but I think his vagueness is an emerging understanding of vulnerability and his feelings, and he has extremely limited experience and understanding of it. So he will try to describe it, but has a hard time with it and doesn't have the words, and might even have a harder time digging deeper, and because he's only comfortable with so much vulnerability or something. Another a way of saying his vagueness is to almost say it's poetic in a sense, because the words don't make sense, but I get what he's saying, I think, which is one version of poetry, right? So I think what he's saying is, with you, it's the whole package. With Molly, it was, sure, we have similar, and you'll hear other cast members say this when they're comparing two people, that, like Mason actually did that with Megan, with Madison, that with one person, yeah, it's comfortable, we're similar, we have similar interests, and we vibe in that way. But with you, I feel it, right? It's more of my heart, or it's more of a deeper relationship emotionally. I think that's what he's saying. But, I'm reading between the lines and in that way giving him the benefit of the doubt. He could be saying something completely different that could also be laudable, but he could also be something completely different that is extremely problematic. I can't tell. She seems to indicate that she knows what he's saying. I can also imagine her saying, I have no idea what he's saying, but I'm just going to nod anyway.
That.
Yeah.
So I was like, why not?
Yeah. Like, this is the start of us.
And I didn't catch that. And they just said, why not? Yeah. So it's tempting, I think, to conclude that he knows that he's not into it and is just doing this to be on the show, or he is just trying to play with someone's mind or something. It could be, but there's just so many indicators that are not in that direction. Like the very fact that he went around that party and was asking everyone if they had had sex. Why would you do that if you weren't really focused on, is my relationship with Lauren normal or healthy or good, or how is this? Is intimate? Is this what intimacy looks like? Because I don't know. Is this okay? And so anyway, you could interpret all that as evidence that he is really trying to figure this out, and he's very concerned, because if he was just tricking, he'd just party at the thing and move on, right? So there's that thing. And the fact that he says, why not, I think that's and it's confirmation bias I could be engaging in, but given the whole picture, I think I would put as the top hypothesis, which I can't know, that I would pursue if he were to come into therapy and ask for help with interpreting this sort of thing for himself, would be, and he might benefit from doing that himself, but that he is emerging into vulnerability because he knows that he would benefit by doing that, because he has a lot of unmet needs, maybe his entire life, and has a very low understanding of it. And at the same time, as he becomes vulnerable, it's it's both comfortable and uncomfortable. And the uncomfortable part of him wants to protect him by engaging in an old routine of defense that involves superiority and pathological independence and non-dependence on someone else. And so as he's being vulnerable in his way of saying, I love you and want to be with you and like you, even though that was very indirect and vaguely stated by him, then a defense kicks in and wants to downplay it. There's another possibility that he legitimately is on the show and wants to move forward, and at the same time has an almost impossible, that he has no way of knowing if his feelings are true, and what do those feelings look like and feel like. It's never been modeled to him, who knows. And he is viably concluding to himself that he doesn't really feel it deeply, but maybe everyone is like that. We haven't heard anything about his parents' marriage or that sort of thing. Given everything we're seeing, I would not be surprised if there was a lot of complication there. I can't know, and I don't want to start rumors or put ideas in anyone's head, but it's possible. This is the way he operates. It just seems like he has never experienced and never seen an even close to a healthy relationship. Now, one could say that by the time he started paying attention, his mom started suffering from cancer, and it made it difficult. And that could be another factor. But anyway, so I think that he says, why not, as potentially, in addition to trying to engage in pushing people away to protect himself, as a way of communicating that he really just didn't know, and was saying to himself, I'm feeling it, and why not? Like, worst thing that happens is I get close to the altar and I'm not sure, and so I pull the plug. Or maybe this is the right, how do I know if this was right or not? It feels like it might be right. I don't know. Why not? You could see someone thinking that. You just wouldn't hope to hear that from your fiance if you're Lauren.
Like merging our lives, and like that's, how many times did we talk in the pods about like how excited?
And I'll stop yammering, but that's another indicator that he's not faking, because if he was faking, he wouldn't say something like that. He would act the way other people on the show look like when it seems like they might be faking, particularly in retrospect, where they will avoid even having these conversations, or they'll just be really nice, like, I love you, and or they'll word things like, I could imagine myself spending the rest of my life with you, that kind of stuff. And I don't know if they're deluding themselves or they're deluding the other person, or they have reached an understanding that they're not going to say yes at the altar and they're just deluding the cameras. But we've seen that many times. And if he were faking it, he would, or he's just really bad at faking it. But well, there's versions of faking that I think are possible, but not in that classic sense. I think it's possible that if he were, and maybe he has, dug down deep, he's like, yeah, there's not a pretty high likelihood that I'm going to want to see this through, because at the very least, I just don't know enough about myself and this relationship to know if it's going to work. And, with all the headaches of my family, I've progressed far already. I've already grown a lot and really pushed things, beyond. And that's enough for now. And I will continue to do this, and maybe things will work out, but I'm 99% sure I'm a no at the altar, or I don't even want to go to the altar or something like that. So, and I really like her, and I've never felt this way before, and maybe we'll continue to date after. I could see a scenario like that, which when I say it out loud, that's pretty shitty to do to someone, or it's in the back of his mind. I don't know.
Of our lives.
Exactly.
And that starts like tomorrow. We'll get our phones back. We'll exchange phone numbers.
Yep. Hopefully don't have it already.
I don't think so. Pretty confident about that.
I know, same.
But
we'll see.
we'll see. Never say never.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Minneapolis is a big town, right? But I think like Seattle, it's small enough that it can feel like a small town or a small world at times. And I don't know if that's what they're talking about, that maybe we would have met before and we just don't remember it, right? I don't think what they're saying is maybe we would have dated before or maybe we met drunk at a club and I think maybe that's what they're saying, and exchange numbers. Yeah, I think that's what they're saying. What do you think they're saying?
Your last text me is fuck you. Asshole.
Or like a ghost emoji.
And they're joking, but that is more the direction of them joking about having dated before. Okay. I don't think they're being serious, and they're joking, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever ghosted someone?
Yeah.
Okay. Out of nowhere, because they're joking around about ghosting, and she asks, have you ever ghosted? It's a good question, and it would be interesting to know the answer to that. To me, what I would be interested in is how they framed it currently. For someone to have ghosted or cheated in the past, that's not, to me anyway, in my life decisions, not necessarily a red flag of anything. If anything, everything hangs on how they frame it, right? If they don't have evidence that they have thought about it and investigated it and are sorry about it or something, then that's a huge red flag. Whereas if they hadn't cheated or ghosted in the past, it could just be a matter of circumstance that they haven't done those things, or they don't remember or something. It would be weird. But, at the very least, the fact that they haven't done those things isn't a bad thing, but it's not an opportunity for me to see someone and how they process and how they have processed things. Whereas if someone says that they've ghosted or cheated and they talk about how they have, and the typical way they talk about it on the show is, I've really grown since then and stuff, but I'd be asked, well, grown how? If someone said, yeah, I ghosted someone, and, so, this is good for everyone to think about, not only when dating, but also for yourself. And I believe this to be, I'm fairly confident that if someone said the following role play, that it would be, at the very least, a minor green flag, if not a major green flag, that they say, yeah, I did. In fact, I've ghosted a few people in the past, and at the time, I thought it was fine as a way to do that. I knew it was called ghosting, and I'd heard that's bad, but I now, looking back, realize that I was avoiding having those conversations, and I'm not even sure if they considered us to be together enough to need me to break up. All I know is I was definitely avoiding having to have a direct communication about how I didn't want to date them anymore. And I convinced myself that ghosting was okay. And in those relationships, they were fairly new and not very deep. But they were deep enough that I definitely should have had a conversation, at the very least over the phone and not by text. and definitely not just go, I think of this one woman that I dated 5 years ago who texted me and was like, what's going on? I haven't heard from you. How you doing? And I just completely ghosted them. And she texted a couple more times, and she texted this smile or this frowny emoji. And I don't know how hurt she was, but clearly she was hurt. And I would to myself say that she was being psycho, but looking back, she was the healthy one. I had trouble, and I think the reason why is because of my age and also the kind of guys I was hanging out with. They would say that was normal, and also my issues growing up in my family. And I realize now that wasn't okay. I think with the other two women, I don't know if they even noticed because it was such a new relationship or cared. But definitely with one, it was bad, and I feel bad about it. And sometimes I think about reaching out to her and saying I'm sorry, but it seems weird to do that 5 years out of the blue or something. But I don't know. I just feel bad about it. And so that end of role play, if they had that kind of response, to me, that is a huge green flag. Because that processing and that perspective and that heart and that remorse and that morality and that ethics and that practice of independently looking back at something without needing to, right? This role-played individual didn't frame it anyway as having to do that because they were being confronted or something, right? They just did it on their own. They just matured into a different state of morality and concern for other people's feelings. And then it just dawned on them like, oh, or they got ghosted themselves maybe in a sense or directly. And they knew how it felt like, so the fact that someone has ghosted before isn't as much of an indicator as how they frame it. Same with cheating. So he is indicating that he has ghosted in the past. I will commend him for saying that he has. A lot of people in this scenario would say no, either because they don't want to tell the truth to their potential partner because they're worried about being rejected or seen in a negative light or in front of the cameras. By the way, I've heard that, and it doesn't surprise me, that the internet is going after Dave and Madison and directly communicating to them or commenting or all that stuff. And I don't need to remind you, but that is immoral behavior on behalf of the audience. It is bullying. It is mob bullying. It is destructive. I would argue it's borderlining criminal behavior to make people feel unsafe and to attempt to make them feel shitty, to try to give them a complex, to try to harm their mental health the way that these individuals will do, and to confidently diagnose and the thing that I always say is, because I speculate, right? But I hope at no point do you get the vibe that if, for example, an individual on one of these shows suffered from personality disorder, that therefore they deserve to be attacked. It's quite the opposite. When I think about Chelsea and Jimmy, there's a lot of data there in the camp of borderline personality. Of course, it's complete speculation based on an edit. And a lot of the things that were being presented in the edit, of which there was an inordinate amount of data in that direction, was extremely reminiscent of clients that I've worked with. I can't know, but it was reminiscent of that. And I talked a lot about that. And I hope at no point, and I was quite explicit about this, I believe at the time, that therefore she deserves hate or harm or bullying or people telling her she's a piece of shit or even anything, really. Unless it is very certain that by commenting on their Instagram or DMing them or even just posting something online about an opinion about them, unless you know for sure that the cast member will not feel hurt by it or scared by it in particular, then go for it. And I filter everything that I say in my content through that filter. Maybe some people would disagree with that, but I do think about that heavily. Are there times where even I, looking back, would say that I might have not paid attention to that enough? Yeah. It's always weird when people ask a question and then answer it, which I just did. I think I was asking that question in my head as I was saying it, and then answered it. So, yeah, I think there were times maybe, but not overall. I believe that if I'm thinking of Zeneb actually, because in that season I was pretty. I said a lot of things that were on my mind, and particularly when she was going after Cole about the cuties thing, and then we see the cuties thing, and we're like, oh boy. And what Zeneb did to him on the altar. It's one thing to say no. It's another thing to accuse him directly and spread rumors about Cole that he is an atrocious monster, body shamer, abusive, controlling individual, which is exactly what she was saying. And then we see the cutie scene, we're like, what? So, distortions hurt people, and people don't have any control over the distortions really. But I didn't refrain from that, but I would hope that when you would potentially, in fact, I know through an intermediary anyway, that Zeneb actually had watched at least some of my content, if not all of it, and said that she was cool with it. And actually, I shouldn't quote her on 3-year-long memories, but all I know is that another YouTuber was talking with Zeneb behind the scenes, and that YouTuber reached out to me and said, would you like to talk to Zeneb on your channel? And I said, yeah, or off the record, just out of just wanting to chat about whatever. If Zeneb has any problem with anything I said, I'm open to hearing that on or off the record. Because, the prime directive of this channel is not to harm these cast members for me. It's one thing to educate and spread information that I believe is helpful for people. But if in that process I am harming anyone, let alone these cast members, I would shut this whole thing down if I believed that I was doing that. So this intermediary, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it seemed very credible that this other prominent YouTuber told me that Zeneb actually did want to talk to me and wasn't planning on blasting me. So, I don't know what that says. It turned out that in the end, that conversation never happened. I think just because of, to tell you the truth, a lot of cast members will do this. They'll reach out to me and say that they want to talk to me. And I'm always coming from a place of, at the very least, I just want to ask them if they saw anything that I said, how they feel about it, because I want to be given a chance that if they feel hurt by it, that I would apologize, and maybe even publicly apologize, because I do not want someone to feel bad. And actually, it goes back to the very first season of Love is Blind when I heard, and again, it's just rumor, through other cast members that Mark was unpleased with what I was saying about him. And that was, I don't know to what degree, but that was really upsetting to me. And I remember the time thinking, well, what was it that I said? Anyway, so I, at the very least, would want that conversation, because I'm always worried about that. And I'll edit stuff out that I am worried that if they were, that's, the perspective of therapists, there's certain venues that we have a lot of practice in, one of which is that when we are taking notes of a client session, we're told, and I'll tell my supervisees, to imagine that the client is watching over one shoulder and a lawyer is watching over the other shoulder, meaning that you don't want anything in the client record that you wouldn't want the client to see because they have full access to their file at any point. And it is, depending on the situation, considered unethical to harm your client if it can be helped, and you just want to think about that. And also you want a lawyer looking over this, you want to imagine that happening because you don't want to do anything that would put you in any sort of legal or ethical or licensure risk. So in that way, when I am talking into this camera, well, I'm really talking to this microphone, I have a part of my attention on that. Would I be okay with this individual watching this video and hearing what I'm saying, even if they heard a snippet? And I won't publish, or I won't say, or I'll edit out if the answer is I don't know. If I don't know that if they would be hurt by it, or I think there's a possibility, then I won't include it. Anyway, so I hope that none of you are going after anyone on the show, is my point. And Dave, so I'm hearing that Dave and Madison are being attacked severely, actually. I don't know how they compare to other seasons, but I'm guessing that it's up there, right? And I just think that is horrible. So I hope that none of you are doing anything like that. And it's up to you. And I'm not this sort of person online, but if you are and you see that happening and you want to push back on that, then I will absolutely commend you if you attempt that, whether or not it's going to work or not. And always be safe for yourself because you don't want the mob turning on you. But I will see that at times and feel very good about it. One phrase that I think should be said more often in online discussions, because what I'll see is people will, if someone's, in fact, I saw this recently that someone online was really going after one of these cast members, and some people were reacting against it as a way, I think, to say, whoa, that's going a little far. But the caveat that they had to always give is something on the lines of, well, I know that Dave or Madison or whoever is a horrible person, but I think you're going too far. People feel like they have to provide that caveat. And I find that that is based on a notion that I think shouldn't be appeased. One, sure, if you don't like the person but someone's going too hard on them, you could in your mind think, well, I don't really like the person either, but I think that's going a little too far. I think you could say in the comment, I think you're just going too far. And I don't think you need to justify that you also hate that person. You know what I mean? Well, you get my point. And I think if we all do that, we can be maybe a part of a general movement that I see occurring, actually, of paying attention to how the mob is actually affecting these individuals and being careful about it. We're far from changing the culture of reality TV audiences to where it needs to be, but I see in my way, from my perspective, evidence that there are some changes in the culture. So let's all participate. I will do that as well, but if you can and you can feel safe, then participate in that cultural shift, because I want to watch these shows and enjoy myself. I don't want to watch these shows and think that I'm participating in the harming of an individual. You know what I mean? All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.